This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Have you been thinking about therapy? Have you been trying to get in to see a therapist? Have you found that a lot of therapists that you've been recommended to have either closed books or they've got a really long waiting list? Sometimes months. If you're lucky, it's a couple of weeks. Now, what if there was an alternative that gave you quicker access and at your convenience? So, when starting to think about looking for a therapist, try BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient and flexible to your schedule needs. So, just fill out the brief questionnaire and get matched with a registered therapist. You can also switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So get moving with therapy and visit BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/Gunter today will give you 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gunter, GUNTER.
Listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspire Change with Gunter. I'm your host and I'm here to challenge the status quo and to inspire some transformation. So we're on a topic that appears to be giving, and that is the issue of misogyny. Okay. Now, initially, I wasn't going to do this, but I got to the point where I thought there are so many comments about this particular event that I felt I couldn't let it go. So you're going to ask, well, what are you talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is the recent speech by Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker at Benedictine College. And aside from my own observations in this, I want to introduce a guy who really surprised me in many respects, who I think deserves to really be listened to, a guy called Thor Bradley. And he appears to be a progressive voice in masculinity studies. So I want to look at some different opinions about these two guys and see how Thor's critique lines up with my view about making good men great and my model of masculinity. So let's start with an overview of Harrison Butker's speech. Now, he was talking at the Benedictine College addressing new graduates. And he made several controversial comments. Firstly, he criticised LGBTQ plus Pride Month, referring to it as the deadly sin sort of pride, and advocated for a God-centered pride instead. Now, given the fact that he is at a Benedictine college, a Catholic college, and he himself is a professed Catholic, you sort of go, well, maybe he's sort of in line with the general ethos. However, interestingly enough, it was the Benedictine nuns who eventually came out and seriously and severely distanced themselves from Butker. So let me give you just a snippet of Butker's speech to sort of give you a sense of his tone and content. So this is his soundbite. He says, I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. Okay. But from anything else, pretty 1950s. In fact, pretty previous millennia. Uh, so these remarks, along with his critiques of President Joe Biden's policies on abortion, IVF, and surrogacy, and his encouragement to men to be unapologetic in their masculinity, well, it just sparked a huge backlash. So some of you might be going, well, what's the problem? He's got a right to speak. He's got a right to hold his opinion. And I agree. I'm the first person to fundamentally support your freedom to say what it is that you think. However, that's not what he was doing. He was addressing a graduation class of many, many women as well as many, many men. So to segregate and divide that body through his opinion, I have a problem, ethical and moral issue with. So as I've gone through all the sort of various comments and feedback and so on about Butker's speech, I ran across a guy called Thor Bradley. And in my view, Thor, who has a pretty well known progressive stance on masculinity and inclusivity, provides a sharp contrast to Butker's views. So let me give you some of the key points Thor made in his critique of Butker. So firstly, Thor highlighted the lack of inclusivity in Butker's speech. You know, by criticising LGBTQ plus Pride Month, Butker alienated a significant portion of the community. Thor argued that such statements marginalise the community and fail to promote the inclusivity and the respect that are crucial in today's society. And I couldn't agree more with that. We're not looking at division. I mean, right now, the United States, above and beyond most countries, needs to look at itself and heal the fundamental divisions in its society. So, I just want to read you a little snippet of Thor Bradley expressing his concern. He says, Butker's remarks are a stark reminder of the deep-seated patriarchal values that still persist. Suggesting that a woman's ultimate fulfillment is in the traditional roles is a disservice to the incredible strides women have made in various fields. And he stresses that this just so sounds so much 1950s. So Thor also took issue with Butker's promotion of the traditional gender roles for men. He says Butker's call for men to be unapologetic in their masculinity and to resist cultural emasculation was seen by him and me as perpetuating harmful stereotypes. There are different masculinities. He also emphasised that masculinity should not be narrowly defined and that men should be free to express their identities in diverse and inclusive ways. So if your sense of masculinity is tied up with being the provider, protector, controller, then you need to re-evaluate your sense of what it is to be a man. So Thor also critiqued the political and religious bias in Butker's speech. And using a commencement address to express personal, religious, and political views, particularly those that are polarizing, was, according to Thor, inappropriate for such a setting. He argued that the commencement speeches should aim to inspire and unify graduates, not divide them. So he also pointed out Butker's misinterpretation and inappropriate reference to a Taylor Swift lyric. I think Butker was trying to be cute and cutesy about this, but he just bluntly and blatantly missed the point. He used it to support his Catholic values, which many found out of place and are indicative of a broader misunderstanding of popular culture. So, where does Thor and where does making good men great stand in this? Well, my view is that the two of us are actually very closely aligned with our idea of masculinity, which emphasizes reimagining masculinity through a comprehensive process of education and through building supportive networks of men to be better in their relationships with each other, but also with women as a whole. And it is about allowing women, well, that's badly put, but it's about women having the right to choose how they want to live their life and what the emphasis of their lives are. That it's not up to us men to coerce them and control them and to put them in a box. That's not my right or ambition as a man to do. My view is that we as men and women live together as equals where, apart from sharing the material, like what we earn and what we establish in our asset base and so on, but that we also have a sense of a greater place of that. That is, that we need to be, coming into our relationships from a point of being a provider emotionally, socially, intellectually. It ain't all about the money, right? And if you, as a male, can't handle that she potentially or has a greater earning capacity, then you need to check yourself in. You need to go and do some personal growth. It shouldn't matter where she stands with regard to the finances. It doesn't matter whether you happen to be better at the housekeeping than she is. Together is where we build our strengths, and we should play to our strengths. Some men have no massive ambition to be hugely materially successful. They like the capacity to have the choice to enliven and enrich their family's life through their contribution on the domestic front. And if she desires and has that ambition to lead in her profession or in the corporate life, then by all means, that is not just laudable, but it's her right to do. And I, as her partner, will back her 100% and not to try and stick her into some traditional, outdated, and toxic box. So, apart from the comprehensive education that our society actually needs to go through, which is one of the things that Harrison Butker demonstrated, is how behind the times and how locked into a stereotype he is, we need to free ourselves from restraining and constraining social expectations. because they have a very harmful effect on who we are as people. So finally, from my perspective and the Making Good Men Great model, it stresses the importance of building supportive networks that are inclusive, that give us all a chance to thrive, not just survive. And Thor's advocacy for inclusivity and respectful discourse fosters a supportive environment where men can explore and express their identities without fear of judgment or exclusion. Because the bottom line was Harrison's address was pretty judgy and it's pretty dated, even though the patriarchs, the traditionalists, the conservatives, and I should stress that what is now seen as conservative wasn't what conservatives saw when they spoke about conservatism. It wasn't about being regressive. Conservatism was fundamentally about conserving fiscal material assets more than being, a little loose with the change, which they, accuse the other political parties or other political ideologies of being. Okay. What we're seeing now under the supposed conservative umbrella is regressive and it's toxic and it's destructive. So, as I want to wrap up, it's clear that Butker's speech ignited an important discussion about the whole inclusivity, gender roles, and the responsibility public figures have in their messaging. I am still puzzled why, at a college level, we stick jocks up in front to tell us how to suck eggs. I'd rather, and this is nothing against the jocks, they work hard, they deserve success, but at the same time, some of them do not really respond well to a platform that addresses a different audience. I think there should be a balance. I have no hesitation listening to the jocks or highly successful sports people who have a well-rounded and extensive experience about, firstly, what it is to be human, and then secondly, how it is to achieve. I will spend a lot of time listening to people like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, about his views, because he's not just been successful as a sports person, he is a successful human being, despite the fact that some people, keep bringing up his little, the affair and all that sort of stuff. But I feel that this is a man who handled that error in his ways, in a way, with, some respect and some aplomb. And, we all deserve, especially if I'm coming from a Christian background, a sense of forgiveness. Now, as I've pointed out, fundamentally, I'm not a Christian, I'm secular, right? But I am a person who lives by a very strong moral code, strong values. And the values that are espoused by people like Butker are not mine. They're not many people's. And in a secular society, we need to respect that. So, Thor Bradley's critique really highlights the need for this whole discussion to have more of an inclusive platform and to be progressive. One of my fears is that certainly the United States is heading towards the Handmaid's Tale much quicker than I thought it would. The whole notion of a theocracy is literally simply around the corner. And then we have the Australian ex-Prime Minister Scott Morrison teaming up with someone like Donald Trump. Now, go figure. Again, I respect everyone's right to believe what they want, religiously, ideologically, and so on. But in a secular society, it has no place being put upon the rest of the population, upon the whole of the society. Our laws are secular, they're not religious. They have some connection with it, but that's an important differentiating point. So let me thank you for listening to this. I could go on for a lot longer and with a bit more of a rant, but I won't. I think this has already been a little bit. In the next podcast, I want to tie this thing with misogyny together because we're not finished with this. And this is, again, one of the things that, Harrison Butker's speech showed. People lauded him for having the guts to get up and espouse his conviction, but that's not what he did. He criticized women and he criticized men who chose a masculinity different towards than the traditional one. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with your friends. But please, let's continue to think critically about what happens up in the public sphere and how that affects our relationships with each other, how it affects my relationship with myself, and where it is that we want our society and culture to go. Because right here and now, we're going down, not up. We're playing to the lowest common denominators. We need to step it up. And Thor Bradley, in my view, looking at his material, is an example of doing that. So thank you, Thor. And thank you to all you listeners. Until next time. This is me signing off. Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.guntersvoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com. For inquiries regarding broadcast topics or appearing on the show, email Miranda@noirtainment.com. That's Miranda at NOIRTAINMENT.com.